Did you receive help at key transition stages in your learning journey? For example, nursery to primary, primary to secondary. When my mum was told that I was deaf, she realised she had to learn British Sign Language. And so they looked around and they found a deaf role model who I now call my deaf mum. She would come to our house every Wednesday to teach us for 2 or 3 hours a week. She taught my mum, she taught me, and it was a really natural transition to nursery. She would come to my nursery too, and then the same moving from nursery to primary, so it was lovely and smooth. Moving from primary to secondary was not. My first high school wasn't a good fit for me. The deaf unit was very small and the teachers of deaf didn't use British Sign Language, so I just tolerated it. I had a lot of hearing friends, which was lovely, but the rest of it didn't go so well. I then moved to a different secondary school. Teaching was a bit tricky, but I had a great social life and transition. Moving from secondary to university, I started during COVID, so that was tricky. Wasn't really sure how to navigate university life or understand what university was like, so that was a bit tricky. Since then, it's been great though. What information do you feel would be useful for hearing staff in schools to know so that they could support you or other deaf children and young people better? Well, one bit of advice is for support staff to listen to your deaf pupils, learn more BSL, listen to the young people. Ask them what support they need, listen to what they want, and that will allow you to tailor your support to them. Talk to them and listen to them. I think you should always do that. Can you tell us briefly about your skills in British Sign Language and also your reading and writing skills in English? I'm proficient in British Sign Language as it's my first and preferred language. I also have skills in reading and writing English. I'm at university studying politics. Do you use other languages? Yes, I use Chinese Sign Language. I only use that when I am with my deaf Chinese friends who use Chinese Sign Language. At home, I also use Mandarin with my family. They know me and they know my accent, so I can speak Mandarin with them. So Mandarin, Chinese, English, a bit of a mix. How do you feel about other languages, for example, French, Spanish or German? In my old school, they offered German as a subject and I wanted to do that. In S1 to S3, you're allowed to pick a subject to learn, and I wanted to pick German. However, I was told I wasn't allowed to do that because there's a spoken element of the subject, which was really disappointing. I'm really interested in German history, the culture, the community. I would have liked to have done that, but I didn't have the opportunity. How valuable do you feel language learning is to your learning? It's an interesting question. I think it's really worthwhile learning a foreign language, but I think of more value to me would be to learn a foreign sign language. I recently went to South Korea and Portugal and met lots of international deaf people with lots of different sign languages being used, and it was fascinating. I think it would have been really valuable to me to have learned a foreign sign language instead of a spoken language. Do your parents use BSL? Yes, my mum and dad both sign. I mean, they're not great, they're not fluent, they might take their time, they get there, but they can communicate for sure. When I was young, as I said before, my deaf role model, like my deaf mum, used to come to my house and teach me BSL, and my parents as well. It started from when I was very young until now, and we have our own home language as well. How do you feel about BSL being taught in schools? Well, obviously, I would be delighted to see BSL as being part of the curriculum. It really should have happened 20 years ago, and I'm just happy that it's been treated, in the same respect as other languages. It's good to see it there now. It's good to see hearing people learn and grow the workforce, and hopefully in the future we'll have more interpreters, doctors that can sign, public services that can sign. I'm happy to see that happening. Would it be helpful to sit your examinations in BSL? We did actually have that opportunity. We had a teacher of deaf or somebody who could use BSL that would come into the exam with you and sign the question. For example, I could ask, can you sign number 4 for me, and make sure I had clarity over the question. Then we had the opportunity to either write it in English or use sign language and have that recorded. Just whatever you felt comfortable. It's the same information anyway, so we were given options. In university, we didn't have exams in the first year due to COVID. The course is heavily based in English and is mostly essay work. When it comes to writing essays, sometimes I'm quite happy writing the English myself, and I will ask my interpreters to proofread the English to check the grammar. Other times, I have an English mental block and I prefer to sign the information to the interpreters, who can then type this up for me. So there are many ways to do this. What were the main challenges or barriers your school faced in engaging your parents in your learning? My parents are hearing, so they didn't need any extra support, but it was me who needed support. If it was a parents' evening or a school show, etc., the three of us would attend and the interpreter would be there for me. My parents were there to learn about my education or to enjoy the Christmas show or whatever, and I would be there and I would access via the interpreter. It was me that needed an interpreter rather than my parents. With my parents, if it was parents' evening, whether my parents were there to see how I was doing, if I was doing good or bad, my parents' hearing people could communicate, so that was fine. It was me that would sit there and think, I have no idea what's going on. And then we would get home and my mum would then explain to me what had happened and maybe what the next steps would be. How did your school engage with BSL parents at school events or parents' evenings? If the parents are deaf, I imagine they would provide interpreters, but I would also expect that the deaf parents would make sure there were interpreters provided. I would imagine they would make sure they're booked. Is there any other information you think other deaf or hearing parents would like or need to know if they find out their child is deaf? I think the most important bit of advice I would say is make sure you have a deaf role model. Get them involved in everyday life. This is what happened with my family, and had a massive impact, so that would be my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice would be to expose yourself to deaf club and deaf culture. Expose yourself to learn from others. We have a rich and amazing community and culture, so expose yourself to that and you might just learn something new.